Welcome to Tom's Engaging HR podcast, where we are dedicated to engaging HR business leaders who are dedicated to making work better for employees. Let's go. Today, we're looking at episode 2 here on the season. I want to thank John for interviewing me on our first episode of Tom's Engaging HR. Also want to thank Break Signals, who created our intro, outro music. They have a new album out on Spotify called A Steady Frequency. You can check that out, but big, huge thanks to them for letting me use their music in my podcast. All right, so let's get to it. Laura Mazzullo, I've been wanting to interview her, wanting to connect with her on this podcast for months. Actually, no, that's a complete lie. For years, literally since I started this thing. So I'm going to read her a quick bio and we'll get her talking. So Laura is the founder and owner of Eastside Staffing, a boutique recruitment firm specializing in the placement of experienced HR professionals. So we're getting a double dip. We got an HR person that places HR people. This is really exciting. Eastside Staffing offers consulting, coaching, advisory services for organizations looking to learn to hire better or upskill their internal talent acquisition team. Eastside Staffing's values are kindness, curiosity, and humanity. Laura's led by those values and committed to and passionate about the evolution of talent acquisition by consistently creating new ways to innovate and partner with her HR network. She's developed a successful career in recruitment and brings an entrepreneurial spirit and passion for building relationships. You can connect with Laura on LinkedIn, X, Threads, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and we will have all of that in the show notes. So without further ado, Laura, welcome to Tom's Engaging HR.
Thank you. I love this. So honored to be on the first visual podcast. I know I like watching podcasts sometimes, so this is fun that we're doing this.
Yeah, I've watched your podcast. It's do you even call it a podcast? Tell me about that real quick, since I brought it up.
Yeah, sometimes I do a LinkedIn Live with Kelly Swingler, who's in the UK. She studies burnout in the HR community, and we're always kind of interested in peeling back the layers. So yeah, you've seen me on videos with her. And I've been a guest on many other podcasts that have been video and audio. So it's possible those videos pop up on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Who knows? You and I are always talking about different feeds we see things on.
Yeah, I can't keep track of where I see anybody. And, putting this thing together, when I had my previous podcast, it was just Podbean and it would go out to, Spotify and Apple and wherever. And now all of a sudden I've got everything. And I'm like, whoa, I've got 7 channels to manage. I can't manage mine, let alone figure out where everyone else's stuff's coming from.
I know. Kelly just told me about LinkedIn Audio, which I didn't know was a thing, that it has like a Clubhouse option.
Oh, no, don't tell me anything new.
I know. I said, how new is this thing? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, I didn't realize. First of all, Clubhouse, for anyone who doesn't know, was a very short-lived, fun app that we used that was like audio rooms, but nobody does it anymore.
Yeah, I was on it for a while. HR, what was I forget the name of it, but Tracy Sponenberg and Francisco Reyes and Jeffrey Shapiro, they all had a show on it. I listened to a fair bit. That's about the only thing I did on there.
Yeah, me too.
It comes and goes. Well, we're going to stay.
Yeah.
We're charging forward here. How's everything in New York?
Good. Wait, on that note, I just want to congratulate you on joining TikTok this week.
Yes.
Because I am new also. I'm like 2 weeks into TikTok, and I feel like that's a fun place for us to be hanging out now.
Yeah, I love you keeping us there. I definitely did my first ever TikTok this week. I saw you post on LinkedIn via TikTok, and then you'd mentioned, oh yeah, I'm doing TikTok, and maybe I should get back on it. And I hung up from our call and was like, oh crap, I gotta do TikTok now. So
yeah. It wasn't the easiest for me to figure out, but I figure if we keep it simple, how bad can it be?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. The big problem now is I have to keep it secret from my 9-year-old son, who I won't let have TikTok.
Yeah.
So now he's gonna be like, Dad, what the heck? Like, you hypocrite. Like,
yeah,
why do you get TikTok? Like, I don't get TikTok. Like, all right, we'll start a podcast and get TikTok.
Yeah.
Actually, he would start a podcast.
Life in New York is good. It's cold. You lived in New York for a while, right?
Yeah, I was raised in New York at West Point and lived in Manhattan. We share a love for a favorite steakhouse, I believe.
I know. Walensky Grill.
Yeah.
Yes. I've been also enjoying Wolfgang's lately, another classic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the classics are still there. That's one thing I like. Go to a lot of other cities, and I'm constantly like, what's the new restaurant? What's the new restaurant? When I go to New York, like, the classics are still classics. They're still killing it. They still have the waiter that's been there for 47 years.
Exactly. It's very comforting. It is. It's a
Yeah,
good point. People think New York's always evolving and there's always something trendy, and there is, but there's also places you can go back to that just feel very comforting.
yeah, 100%. Like when I go back, it's always the comforting spots. I'll hit like one new one. And New York's such a funny city too, because I lived there and it was my city, and I grew up an hour outside, and I was been going into the city since I was a kid. And now when I go back, I feel like I'm in a complete alien environment. And one of my best friends that lived in the city for 25 years left during COVID. He's going back this week after a year and a half out, and he's like, Tom, where should I go? Like it's the
Oh,
second you
funny.
move out, immediately the city changes and you just feel
Yes,
like an outsider. It's such a weird place.
it is. February is cold and it's a little sunny and warmer today, so I'm going to head out for a walk. Everyone likes when I take pictures in Central Park, and I haven't even been able to take my hands out of my coat, but
I was just
maybe
gonna say
today.
that's one of my favorites. Your midday walks. You always have really good ponderings.
Yeah.
You always have really good ponderings when you're out walking around.
Yeah. I think that's where you get like the innovative ideas is when you just take a break from the computer and get out, get some fresh air.
Yeah, I agree.
Highly
When
underrated.
I go running, it's like a therapy session, an idea session, a think tank. Like
Oh,
it's like
yes.
fitness is like number like 5 on the list when I go for a run of like what my
I
benefits
know.
are.
It's
And,
so
and sometimes
true.
I'll walk too. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It just like gets your brain in a different flow.
Well, I think it brings, it kind of loops back to what you talked about, the values. And it's that middle value: kindness, curiosity, and humility. And I love like that curiosity. That's one of, if you've listened to my other podcast, if you know me, you know that word is, I think, one of the most important words for growth and for successful business and just for a happy life. And I love that you've added
Yeah.
that into your values. And I think
Yeah.
going for those walks sparks that curiosity. Like, what are you going to find? Where are you going to go? Hey, what's that over there? Like, oh, wait a minute. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like going for those walks is a big piece. Do you find like, how do you connect curiosity to your business? And I'm coming out of left field with a new question for you right
No,
off the
that's
bat here.
good. That's our brains.
That's one of your values. How do you connect
Yeah.
that? Is that part of the walks? Like, is that like, how did
Yeah,
that
yeah,
become
yeah.
a value?
I want to show you. I'm such a visual learner. So on my desk, I have my values written out. So, and then I also have this statue that I used to have as a kid. This came from my mom's house of Alice in Wonderland, which is a movie and story I love. And she reminds me to stay curious. So I have them right in front of my face every day, which helps. I think for me, HR can be a kind of rigid space in that there are some kind of, quote, old school mindsets that still consistently occur. And for me to remember, I have to push sometimes my clients out of their comfort zone. I have to push my candidates out of their comfort zone. I have to push myself out of that zone. So just having those visuals, first of all, helps me just stay in that place of like, no, think differently. Do something new, do something fresh, do something innovative. Because hiring can't be done the same exact way every year for 20 years. But yes, getting away from my computer and out. I mean, Manhattan is the ultimate inspiration, right? Because there's endlessly something fresh to look at and new, and people watching and looking at birds in Central Park and just different sounds and smells. I mean, I think all your senses are engaged. So that helps a ton. But yeah, I remind myself really daily, just even by looking at my values, like when I send an email, is this kind? Is this humble? Is this curious? When I'm on the phone, when I'm doing a new kind of proposal or contract or session or something, I think it has to be a consistent and constant question. Like, I think, you to live your values, you can't just say it and then forget about it.
Yeah, I just shared a post. I wish I could remember exactly who. I'll put it into the show notes to give proper respect to the post. But I just saw a post this week, and it was the same type of statement of companies. Ben Brooks from Pilot. There we go. I knew I saw something good there.
Come to you. Yeah.
Another New Yorker, but really just talking about how you can't just have the values and you have to speak to them, and that's so much. It's easier said than done.
Because people don't know it's as simple as asking, like before you hit send on that email, rereading it and saying, is this email aligned with my values?
Yes.
I mean, it's just like that simple. Or like after a meeting, reflecting and saying, how was my behavior in there? How are like just self reflection, right? You and I have talked a lot about that over the years. And I think it's often forgotten. in the HR space, because they're moving so quickly, especially, they're like forgetting to self-reflect.
And this is one of the main reasons I want to have you on, is that you're technically in an HR type of space, being in talent acquisition, and we can go into that other whole debate. Like, TA is not HR. Like, it's totally
Right.
like that's a whole thing. We're not going to go into that. But
That's our next session.
in a lot of places, it's all kind of in the same dome, right? Like, we're all in the same
Yeah.
sandbox here. But then you also now have HR people as clients on the other side that are coming in. And, and I sell into HR. I look at myself as an HR person. I've built HR teams. I've been part of HR. Like, I've loved and partnered with HR my entire career. But now I'm selling into HR. So I feel like I didn't expect this when we first started talking, but I feel like I'm in slightly the same space where I'm constantly like engaging with HR people in a manner to where, yes, I'm 100% trying to support you, but I'm also engaging you in a solicitation sometimes, in ways of like just curiosity.
Yeah.
Actually, I think in their mind, it feels like a solicitation. In my mind, it's that curiosity of, hey, what are you doing? I know nobody has a perfect system. Like, what hurts for you? Is it TA? What are you doing? Where are your pains at?
Yeah.
And even being an advocate, trying to talk and reach out to HR, there's a barrier
Yeah.
that you have to get through. Do you find that? Can you talk to more about what that looks like in your world of acquisition?
Let's peel this vulnerable onion back, Tom, because this is like, nobody wants to talk about this, but yes, we can and we should. So I have been recruiting specifically for HR since 2007. So that's 17 years. I have had my own business for 11. So that whole time is just HR. So yes, to your point, I also partner with HR, and at times I'm sending business development emails or LinkedIn invitations or letting them know about my services, which we can call sales if we want to, which stinks. And I haven't made one cold call in my entire time as an independent business owner, because nobody likes that. But I will tell you, HR leaders typically don't even like my intro emails. That really annoys them. And I have tried to figure out why, because to your point, I feel like all I'm trying to do is say, if you have some need for some help in anything related to hiring, this is my expertise and I'm here for you. But there's a wall. So sometimes they're really defensive and guarded and cranky about it.
Yes.
And I've talked to my friends who partner with marketing departments, sales departments, legal departments, finance departments, and they don't get this. Like, they don't get that kind of reaction. They'll get a lot of, thank you so much. This is really helpful. I'll let you know. I'll keep your info for future, blah, blah, blah. And it's a unique to HR kind of wall. And I can tell you, the biggest epiphany I've ever had about this was actually this week from my friend Kelly Swingler, and we'll include her contact in the show notes too. And I'll make sure you two know each other. Kelly studies really burnout in HR, and she's been an HR leader for years. And I messaged her last week on WhatsApp, kind of cranky, and I said, I've been sending some intro emails that are so kind, so curious, so humble. I've read them out loud. I've sent them to a peer. I couldn't draft a more perfect note. And I don't know why I'm getting these kind of nasty, cranky reactions from HR leaders. Remove me from your list. I don't need your help. We're doing fine. Like, just harsh. And I'm going to read you what she wrote me, because this was like, my brain blew up like that emoji. She said, the closer to burnout you are, the more likely you are to feel as though any offer of help highlights that you're failing. And so I thought, wow, are HR leaders closer to burnout than finance, legal, marketing, et cetera? Is that why us offering them help is feeling like a threat? Do they feel threatened by it because they are so in fight or flight and so kind of reactive? And so I'm landing that with you, because it was for me like, oh my gosh, I've never thought of it with that lens of empathy, that they're just in a painful place.
I feel the exact same thing. Like, I constantly am trying to craft emails of, listen, I'm an advocate. I know I'm not trying to hard sell you. I know every business has areas of opportunity. Maybe I can help in some of them. I'm genuinely curious what each business, what each HR person is like, what battles they're fighting any day, week, month, or year.
Of course.
And I still don't think I've figured out like what my cadence is, because I always try to make sure my values are in there. But you're right, like any flag of, could this be better? Are you strategic? Are you spending time in admin? Does this take way more time than you want? Could this be better? What would better look like in this scenario? You know, like any way I try to pose it does.
Are they sometimes receiving it as being offended, like you're suggesting?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, is this your
Something's
business? Like,
wrong.
are you saying this is me? Like, I don't run a strategic HR team.
Yeah.
Like no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. Like, it's really hard to do that in a way. And I wish, you know, there's people in the HR community in our Twitter circles that I see like, oh man, I saw one yesterday. It's like, if you reach out to me with this and then follow it up with that, and like, if you say this as a vendor, and I look and I go, yeah, those are bad. But what I don't know, what I'm really curious is like from HR people, and maybe I'll start asking this to every HR person on this is like, what do
How do
you
you want
want
to
to
be
hear?
contacted?
Like, how do you, like,
I
what
know.
resonates with you that does not come across as offensive or salesy? And like, because the last thing I want to do is like sell an HR person that's busy. Hey, let me sell you my widget. Like, they're like, get out of here so
sales,
fast.
though. It's funny. I mean, I've been doing this 17 years. If anybody's studied this, it's me. I have asked them, and you know what their answer is? I don't want any communication. But the problem is we run businesses, right? You have a job to do. I have a job to do. We can't completely hide in the shadows. We need to be sort of present and visible. So it's a tricky balance. If it was up to them, we would never email them, never call them, never be in touch.
Yeah.
But obviously we have to. So what's been interesting for me is just to learn, and I'm still learning, really still learning up till this day, 17 years into this, not to take it personally, that they're not mad at
100%.
me.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and two, if they're that edgy and cranky, it's because they are so exhausted and fatigued. So I have tons of empathy for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the irony of needing help and then not being able to receive the help. And no other department seems to be struggling as much with that. So the more we can keep reminding HR leaders, like, it's actually when you need the most help is when you're probably the most resistant to it.
Yep.
It's like,
And what's funny is when I get an inbound lead, someone that found me or found my company, when they're going, all right, listen, I have a need.
right.
I'm going to go find something. And when I talk to them, almost always they're like, oh my God, it's like there's so much out there. I have no clue where to even start, which always brings me back to like, well, I mean, I've like called in, tried to like
Explain it.
help, try to just like start, like not sell you stuff. But I don't know. I feel like it's maybe the worst of us out there that are creating those wounds that make it hard for the best of us out there.
See, no, because I think that's still putting the blame on us. I don't think it's the salespeople. I don't think it's the partners. I think it's the HR leaders themselves. You know what it is? It's they
That's
feel
a strong
defeat.
take.
But it is, because I think they feel, because when they call me inbound, right? This is what I get. Hi, Laura. We have a VP of HR opening. We've tried to work on it for 30 days. I'm so annoyed we have to call you. I can't believe we need your help. We tried to do it on our own. I guess we need help. They feel defeated.
It's like
they
such a
feel
sigh.
annoyed.
Yeah.
But they're like embarrassed they couldn't do it alone. Whereas if I did finance recruiting, which I'm glad I don't, because the HR community needs me, and it's like, I want to stay here. But if a finance guy called me and said, we've been working on this job 30 days, they'll say, ugh, and thank God you exist for our help. We really need you. I know you're the best. Let's go. HR people bring that kind of defensiveness because they feel they should know it all. They feel like, you know what? I should be the best at all these things. You offer a technology that's supposed to help them. They feel like they should be able to do it without your technology. I offer a service that helps them. They feel like they should be able to do it without a service. The most confident HR pros who have grown, again, in self-awareness, self-reflection, they've done the work on themselves. This sounds hippie, but it's true. They can call me and say, Laura, we need your help. I'm delighted to have it. I need it. I trust you. Go. Let's go. I will listen to you. I will heed your advice. I want your wisdom. Can we please partner together? But that's a rare bird. And when it happens, I compliment the heck out of them and tell all your friends how you handled this. Because you're an example to the whole community of being willing to receive help, being willing to recognize it's not a defeat. It's just not, right? Not getting technology that's going to help them is not a defeat.
Yeah, it's not. And it's, while you were talking, I was really looking inside myself and realizing I get a lot of sales companies trying to sell me sales stuff that'll help me be a better salesperson. And I'm like, ugh. And I just kind of opened myself up recently to a couple new ones that were referred. And I'm going, wow, this is really helpful stuff here. Why wasn't I more open to it? So, I think...
What do you think it is?
I think I was exactly what we were talking about, and that is on the other end of our conversation of me going, I've been doing this X years. I know how to do this. I don't need your book. I don't need your seminar. I want to get better, but I don't need that big of a thing to make me get better. And I'm starting to lean back into it.
There we go. Yeah. And there we go about you not living your values. Because if you say your curiosity is a key value, then that was butting up against your curiosity.
Yeah. And I didn't even realize it. So
Yeah.
I guess that's, like the awareness. All right, listen, I want to jump into, we're going to do our first ever HR hot sauce here in a second. And then when we come back, I want to dig more into, so just to clarify, we're not trying to talk bad about HR people. Like, we are huge advocates. Like,
never, ever. This is to help.
This actually is kind of like rolled out of like, wait, like people trying to help, like, what are we seeing? What are the conversations like? And really the end goal, I wake up every single day, like, how can I help and not bother and not be a pain in the butt? How can I genuinely just help the people that need help? And finding them's kind of hard, and you got to go through all these other conversations to get there. But I just want to clarify, like, yeah, we love HR, and that's why we're here.
Wait, let me add to that because I think this is important.
Yeah.
We're showcasing some of the weaknesses in HR so that they can catch them and elevate themselves. That is what it is.
Yes.
If we act like everything's perfect, we're not helping them. We're starting to identify some of the hot buttons they're facing and some of the challenges and why they're being cranky and guarded. And we're saying to them, we can help you. If you just start looking at yourself and reflecting, you might catch it. And you might be able to say, this isn't serving me. Wouldn't I rather receive help? Wouldn't I rather have welcome people and services and things that can support me? Wouldn't that be better? That's all.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't think all these cranky people are happy being cranky. And we're just telling them, you don't have to be cranky.
Yeah, like that's the whole purpose of the show, is to humanize HR folks, because I think there is that perception of like, oh, I have to go talk to HR. HR just does this. They hire and fire people. Decline my ask for more money. There's a pretty bad perception in general, but like I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of really good things, and that's the goal here, is to really uplift. So when we come back, we're going to do a quick HR hot sauce. When we come back, I want to get into kind of how you coach when you do engage with HR folks. Like, how good are HR people at interviewing? What coaching do they need? I see a lot of HR people out there looking for jobs. There's lots of turnover in our space now. I want to dig into what that part of the relationship works like. Sound good?
Yeah, great.
All right, let's do the HR hot sauce. Are you ready? New revamped questions. You excited?
Yeah.
Here we go. What most engages you?
My first answer was sunshine, so I'm sticking with it.
Ooh, I love it.
Just a sunny day.
First is always the way to go. What's your favorite piece of technology you use at work?
Microsoft Outlook.
Favorite? Wow. I'm not going to get that answer a lot, but I don't disagree. What's your favorite interview question to ask or be asked?
Anyone that is directly related to a competency you need for the role.
Ooh, yeah. What's your favorite workday lunch?
Probably a salad so I don't fall asleep.
You go to one of those like billion salad bowl places in New York that mix it all up.
I live close to Amish Market, which is like right near the UN, and they have this lunch special. Yeah, you can get a big salad with all the stuff in it. And if I'm not making it at home, I'm totally there. Oh
yeah, we totally lived in the same area. I was at like 49th between 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, we need to talk about that. Okay.
Yeah, we need to talk. Okay, I just heard that. I was like, wait a minute, I used to live right there.
Okay.
What's your most unique or useless skill?
Again, first thought, have no idea how this ties into anything we're talking about, but I'm really good at cooking without any kind of recipe, just getting creative.
Oh, I love that. I'm with you. What makes your day at work?
Kind and appreciative clients.
Mild, medium, hot, or nuclear?
Mild.
Mild, all right. I feel like always the mild folks always just kind of like sheepish bit. Like, I want a mild person that like owns the mild.
Yeah. Yeah, I own it.
There we go. All right, perfect. All right, so that's HR hot sauce. Thank you. Let's get back into the conversation.
Can we just also clarify, because I think this is really important, and I don't want us to brush over this. Like a good best friend or a good therapist will sometimes showcase stuff about you don't want to hear, right? It's like the tough love, which I guess as New Yorkers we're really good at. And So I want to clarify this because sometimes there's a phrase in therapy that I love, like something could be too hot. It's like you say it and it's like, whew, like you felt that when you were thinking about your own emails receiving and oh my gosh. I think it's okay to do that. And I think I think it's magical if we can do that, frankly, in this hour. If somebody can listen or watch us and feel something too hot, to me, we've done our work. So
Love that.
I want to say this. We are not two meek humans. We are two New York-based people. We are strong and we have a lot to say. So if we're saying something and you are an HR person listening and it feels like we're saying something too hot and you could start feeling that little like embarrassment or shame, first of all, don't. It's so common. We're saying all the things that we see for years in this space. It's nothing. You're not the only one who has this. It's more to help you see it, to show you the mirror and to say, gosh, maybe that's me. Maybe I could work on that. I'd like to work on that. I'd like to be better at that. If we just fluff it and give you a very easy show, I don't think we're doing Tom's mission at all. So,
And that is exactly why I think you're great at talent acquisition, because if you're just taking a candidate and throwing them a job and then setting up some interviews and going away, you're not a good TA person. I think talent acquisition folks and recruiters get bad raps too for
completely.
That exact piece of, oh yeah, they're just making money and they're hustling this and that. All they set up is some meetings, and I've told you, the most transformative person in my career was Luttrell Toller, a recruiter that found me and got me out of New York to LA, which in and of itself was an amazing piece of work. But TA, you kind of need to do that. So let's get into that area of expertise for you.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be a lot of parallels to this other conversation, but when you're having the conversations with HR, like, I guess maybe let's start with placing HR people.
Yep.
What are they good at when they're on the interviewing side, and what are some of the areas where, in general, aggregate, HR you find are hurdles they have to really get past to try to get those next positions? Because I want to be helpful here for those people listening too.
You're thinking about the candidate side, right? HR job seekers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So HR job seekers are usually so uncomfortable in that position because they're usually on the hiring end. So they usually bring a lot of vulnerability, which I expect and which is very normal for anyone listening to this. You probably can feel like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to even write a resume. I don't really remember how to be a candidate or interview. And so there's an awkwardness that they feel, and that's totally healthy. I find I have to spend a lot of time with them on just self-awareness around what they want next. Like, what kind of role do you want? What sort of leader do you want? What sort of culture do you want? What kind of environment do you want? Because sometimes they are going off of external perception. Everyone's saying I should work in a tech startup. Everyone's saying I should get out of banking. Everyone's saying I should get a VP title. And when you peel back the layers, maybe that's completely not aligned for them and that's not what they want. And so again, I think it's that, to tie back to a lot of things we're talking about, it's a lot of self-reflection and honesty, self-honesty around like, I care what Tom wants in a new job, not what 16 other people want. There's not one size fits all. And sometimes they're caught up in external perception because, again, I think they're so used to being the critic of candidates as opposed to being the candidate.
Yeah, it's got to be an interesting room to walk into. I know in my space when I'm selling salespeople, it's always a little bit of extra, like, oh, okay, here we go. Like, let's make sure I'm on my game because they know all the little nooks and crannies. And that's got to be tough in HR. So, like, I think that's a good spot, like the awareness and like take that external noise about where you're going out. What are some of the things you make sure to bring them aware of as they're going into these conversations that you found to be the most helpful? You've gotten feedback of, oh, wow, thank you, Laura.
Yeah, I mean, I have them write it down because I believe data is, this is what I coach so many of my recruiting clients on. It's like data is just information that you write down and document somewhere, right? Otherwise, it's just floating in your head. So thinking about your ideal next job is not data, but writing it, even, how much I'm big on pen and paper, just even writing out, again, who was my favorite leader and why? What was my favorite role and why? What was my favorite company culture and why? Just going through some of those questions will give the candidate some clarity. And so you could kind of have a perception, I think I want this. And then when you actually write it out and really look at it, you can see, oh, I was wrong. And it just people often think if I give them that advice, they're like, well, I want to keep an open mind. It's a tough market. I don't want to limit myself. And I always say it's not limiting yourself. It's actually just getting some clarity. Within that, you can then be open, but you should know really what's important to you. Again, back to values, like what you need and want is important. You can find that in a multitude of places, but you should know what's best for you at all levels of HR, right? Junior to senior.
That's hard to do, right? Like when you're junior,
Very.
you're looking up like, I want to go this way, but it's a tree that goes out. When you're a senior, it's where do I get to? And, you see a lot of HR people now going, I'm going to write a book and be a consultant. And I want to be free and not be in the ladder anymore. And it's, you're like every level you're at, there's that, what do I want? And it's really hard to know. Everyone thinks they know. I thought I knew. I was in startups and like, ooh, I'm going to be in startups and I got a big impact and I'm close to the fire. And what I found was that like I had less of an impact. It was, listen, there's not a lot of change. There's not a lot of movement. We have like 3 decision makers. We don't want a lot of feedback. Like just like do this like thing that you're supposed to do and just like only do that and do it super well. And it was totally contrary to what I thought. And I did have freedom. I was like, I could make my own schedule. I worked when I want. Like no one was like managing me. And I told myself that's what I wanted. And now that I got outside of my comfort zone, I realize I'm 10 times happier. Like I'm so much happier in a structured environment where I've got 100 things I have to do, where I get impact, but in a totally different way. And I can have impact on a lot broader scope in my current role than I did in a smaller company. So I think I think writing it down was a big thing for me when I actually got it out and started writing down and looking at what I wrote versus what I thought was in my head. They didn't really match up.
Yeah. Or even after
getting
interviews,
to know yourself is crazy.
Write out. Yeah. And to like, after you interview, I recommend it too. Like, what did I like about that interview? What didn't I like? So you don't just go off of it didn't feel good. Why? Right? This is the same advice I'd give a hiring manager. A candidate didn't feel good. Okay. Why? You have to have some logic to back that emotion. Otherwise, you're not really making any logic-based decisions. That's so cool. I know. I think the more we know ourselves, and the other thing I'd say on the job seeking side is the emails that they're drafting. So like, we don't do cover letters so much anymore, but I get a lot of intro emails or intro LinkedIn notes that are just saying, hi, Laura, I'm job seeking. Please see my resume attached. So many of those are reading really formal and rigid and again, guarded and kind of like lacking humanity as to your podcast kind of theme here. And so when I talk to those HR leaders, I'll say like, tell me about your note, how you kind of drafted that. And they haven't really given it much thought. They haven't thought about their values. They haven't thought about how they want to be perceived or how they want to show up. And I think how you draft communication is really important because that's your first impression. So just again, how you want to be perceived and how you want to show up, I would give it a lot of thought.
Yeah. That was a pause on purpose because I wanted that to sink in. I was going to say something, but I really wanted that to sink in. I think that's, and that's back to like perception isn't always reality. Like in your perception's your reality, other perceptions, other reality. And I think that's really important in HR that, I think in HR, you have to have tough decisions. You have to, a lot of time, be the one to fire someone and write people up and have the weird conversations about like what was in the background of your Zoom, on your remote call. And to do that, you have to be very like focused and rigid, or maybe not rigid, but very focused. You have to have a certain approach when you're having tough conversations. And I think sometimes you do that enough, it kind of takes over. And all of a sudden, you lose some of those other dynamic pieces of yourself.
You lose yourself. That's not good. I mean, yes, but think about a lawyer, right? Your job can have a certain level of formality to it, but you don't have to lose your personality. You don't have to lose your values. You don't have to lose your sense of humor. You don't have to lose your kindness and empathy. So trying to kind of recapture that back, I think, is so important.
So when you're coaching, I mean, what is some advice on how to? We've talked through a lot of this, but what is some advice on how to like help someone through kind of that self coaching, that self awareness? Maybe they're listening to this going, okay, wait a minute, some of this stuff was hot, or some of this might hit me. How do you coach people? I write it down. I think is like
Yeah.
is one we've talked about, but what are some
Yeah.
other ways that you can coach people to like really get in touch with themselves, analyze themselves, and bring themselves best selves forward consistently? Not for an interview,
Yeah.
but for a series. Not for the interview, but for the job, and for the year, 2 years, 5 years you're in that job.
Yeah. First of all, every HR person should at some point in their life, if they can, get some kind of therapy or coaching, because I think that this job and this goes for all recruiting people too, all of HR, including talent acquisition. I know this job requires so much of yourself. There's so much output, so that you do need an outlet to talk through your issues and what shows up for you, because otherwise you're bringing all your baggage every day, right? And that can wear you down. So number one, I mean, I'm not a professional psychotherapist, but I can tell you from experience that
Right.
those who've done some self-improvement work are usually a happier person. So the other thing I just want to say is, a lot of this is like, how do you want to feel as an HR person? You want to feel guarded and you have armor on and it's hard and you're exhausted and you're not coming up for air? Or do you want to feel relaxed and at ease and with a sense of humor? And if you do, yeah, to your point, there's work to be done, right? So there's just like, that doesn't just happen. You have to be consciously
Right.
aware of that. I think it's a tricky thing. Yes, writing down what you need and want, being really clear about your values, having them written out, talking about them verbally with a peer like we're doing, catching, this is a therapy term I like, catching your hooks, like noticing if you send a nasty email response, maybe catching that hook and saying, wow, why did I send that? What was that about? What am I feeling today? How am I doing? Am I all right? I notice it if I'm feeling exhausted and I'm just not in the mood, I'll take a break. Like, I kind of don't push while I'm in that state, because it's just not good for me, not good for the recipient. I think it's just a lot of catching and a lot of awareness, and
Yeah.
then not shaming yourself, right? This is the work I love of Brene Brown. Not feeling
Yeah, she's
like,
great.
oh my God, I'm an awful person for sending that email, or I can't believe what Tom and Laura are talking about. I do that all the time. Okay, so do a ton of other people. This isn't like, we're not describing something so rare. It's just being aware.
Yeah, I think we've described everything that I've personally done and already like
Yeah.
yeah,
And
like
experience every day. And yep, exactly. It's normal. It's like, yep. I have actually, I haven't even mentioned this out loud to anybody, but I've gotten emails over the years that have, and I don't know why, I just thought of this, that have been so interesting and beautiful. Like, I've had HR leaders, really actually HR pros at all levels, email me and say, I talked to you in 2013, 15, 18, and I was having a rough time, and I realized I was short with you, or I didn't listen to your advice, or and I just want to thank you, because it still reverberates what you've said, or now with my new maturity, I'm seeing it differently. Sometimes, to your point, we can be giving what we feel like is harsh feedback, but actually is changing lives down the road. And that's why I don't stop with the candor, because I think it may be too hot right now, but it plants a seed where a couple years later, when someone's ready, they're like, oh my gosh, that's that thing that I'm so glad I'm catching now.
yeah, absolutely.
That's all we can do.
I think about past
Yeah.
leaders that I disliked working for, and I often now look back going, all right, there's definitely some stuff I don't love about that person, but man, I really learned some good things, or they were really right about this piece of me. I just wasn't ready for that then. It was too hot. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting how this
Yeah.
all rings true.
Same. I had a leader similarly who, not many positive things, but there was one thing they said that I remember: don't put your head in the sand, Laura. And I realize I can still do that. Like, when I get a few nasty responses to my outward emails, I'll just decide I'm not sending any more. That's me putting my head in the sand. Get up, send more. I can't hide from that. It's okay. And it's just a good, sometimes I still think of that. It's a good reminder that I sometimes, when I'm under that, I'll flee, right? Fight, flight. I'll just be like, okay, no more emails
like,
for the rest
okay,
of
wait a
24. Like, no, that's not a good approach. Yeah. So catching it, that's the beauty of that fight, flight fawn and freeze, right? Or freeze and fawn. Reading more about that and acknowledging, okay, which one of these is really me? How do I show up when I'm under pressure, when I'm feeling that nervous system dysregulation? How does that feel? And then just again, catching it so that you can show up better in your work. You can't do this job if you're dysregulated. It's so hard.
It is. And that's why we do this podcast. HR is one of the hardest spaces to work in, especially, I mean, I definitely want to have a conversation about burnout specifically, especially because I do feel like almost everybody in every sector is burnt out. TA, HR, payroll, the tech folks, the companies that don't have tech. I mean, I don't care if you're in a big, small, medium, large size company coming out of the last 3 years, you've got some sort of scars. Like, you know, you've burned calories.
Yep.
You know, at work, mental, physical, and it's just a really tough time. And I want to make sure we're helping and opening up and bringing that kindness, curiosity, and humility to these conversations. So.
And you know what? I want to include us in that because sometimes I forget that I too have been through the ringer, as have you. And I think that's why we are sensitive now when we don't feel that kindness back to us, because we're like, you know, we've also been through it. This has not been a fun 4 years for really anybody. And so I think it's okay to kind of expect, as service providers, as partners, like to kind of expect respect in return. I think that's, as I've gotten more self-confident over the years, that's just more important to me than it used to be.
Yep. You know, it's I've been rewatching Band of Brothers purely for that. Like, I don't love watching sad war movies, but like purely like watching these guys like go to war, see the worst horrible things, but then constantly keep pulling each other back up. The only way it works is because of that leadership, that camaraderie, and the ability of the group to pull itself back up. And that's the only way anything goes forward. And that lesson's really, really stuck with me right now. And I'm really glad I went back and took a watch there. I think that's what we're doing. And, you know, this has been great. I think we've hit on your values here. You know, I think we hit on all of them. I think we've been curious. I think there's some kindness. And I think definitely some humility. You know, we're both still working on ourselves here. That's why I like this podcast. Like, the only reason I do this,
all the answers.
The only thing I get out of it is that it helps me work through things. It helps me learn. It helps me grow as a person, talking to great people like you and broadening my perspective. So I appreciate you spending time joining. Tell us again where to find you. We'll put it in the show notes. I want to make sure everyone can reach you.
Okay. LinkedIn is probably where I am the most. And then Twitter/X now. Instagram and TikTok are all at Eastside Staff. So we'll put that down below. I started a YouTube channel a while ago. I'm not really on it as much anymore because I'm finding that there's more engagement and excitement from the HR community on Instagram and TikTok. So I'll stay there. But again, HR community listening, watching, if you want us somewhere else, tell us. We're obviously there to support you. So we don't want to be talking into just a cave of nobody.
That's it. We're trying to amplify. We can't amplify your great ideas if we're not doing it in the right place. Laura, it's a pleasure. Hopefully Puxatawny Phil was correct. I saw you've got a short winter and spring will be coming soon. I hope that is true for the East Coast.
I love that. I would be very welcoming of some sunny days ahead.
I have at least 3 more months of winter, so but we get sun intermixed and pretty warm in between. So, but enjoy. I'll look you up next time I'm back in New York. I really appreciate you. Thank you for kicking this off. This has been great. Look forward to continuing our conversation over the next year offline.
Me too. See you all soon.
All right, and for everyone listening and watching, thank you so much for joining, supporting. Again, we're all over the place. We're wherever you're at, so join us wherever you're at. Find us on Apple, Spotify, Instagram. We got the whole list. And a huge shout out again to Laura Mazzullo for investing her time to come on the show. We're going to fade out to Break Signals, Better, our new theme song. Thank you again for letting us use it. What's better than a song about getting better? Thank you all. We'll see you next episode.